Little did I know, the 8th birthday celebration for my grandson would shatter my understanding of love, family, and trust forever. The grief from my husband's passing was still raw, yet nothing could have braced me for the ordeal ahead. Keep listening to discover the full story. Remember to subscribe and let me know where you're tuning in from. Your comments are always appreciated. That specific day remains vivid in my memory. Just over a year had passed since Harold's death. His absence resonated through every corner of our shared home, a life we had constructed side by side. At 72 years of age, I felt internally like I was clinging to the final remnants of a life that had ended prematurely. Each day stretched endlessly without him, and no activity seemed to lessen the emptiness. I'd rise, drift through the rooms, attempting to occupy my time. Yet, no amount of tidying, tending the garden, or baking could quiet the deep sorrow in my heart. Despite the profound sadness threatening to consume me, I persevered. I pushed myself forward. I even made an effort to connect with Daniel, my only child. He was always somewhat reserved. However, after Harold's demise, I longed to support him. I hoped we could lean on each other. I feared losing him as well. Thus, as Leo's 8th birthday approached, I saw it as a prime opportunity to demonstrate my continued importance. I wished to be present for him, to participate in his life. "Are you certain you wish to attend, Mother?" Daniel's question replayed in my mind while I clutched the party invitation in the kitchen. His tone felt like a sharp rebuke, but I concealed my hurt with a strained grin. "Naturally, I'm going," I replied, aiming for a cheerful tone. "It's Leo's special day. I haven't seen him for several weeks." Daniel paused, then mumbled faintly, "I simply don't want your melancholy to spoil the atmosphere." Melancholy? That's how he labeled it. It was far more. It was deep sorrow, anguish, and a loss so immense that some days I struggled to breathe. Yet, I didn't contend. I merely assented, attempting to dismiss the pain. The celebration was days off, and with its approach, my stomach churned with eager expectation. I longed to see Leo's joyful expression upon my arrival. However, on the actual day, I swiftly understood my earlier enthusiasm was unfounded. The instant I stepped into Daniel and Jennifer's home, I sensed it. A chill in the atmosphere, Daniel's averted gaze as he led me in. Jennifer was courteous but remote, her strained smile failing to reflect in her eyes. I attempted casual conversation, feeling utterly unnoticed. Spotting Leo, a smile naturally formed. He was maturing so rapidly. My heart filled with affection, eager to embrace him. As I moved to hug him, Daniel cut me off. "Mother, not at this moment," he stated abruptly. "The photographers are ready for us." I stopped, stunned. My son had always maintained some distance, but this felt distinct. He had never behaved this way towards me previously. He was brushing me aside, disregarding my presence. The anguish was nearly unbearable. I observed Daniel and Jennifer posing for photos with their acquaintances and neighbors, laughing, beaming, portraying an ideal small family. Meanwhile, I stood isolated in the room's periphery, my spirit fracturing with each moment. Throughout the gathering, I felt increasingly unseen. Each attempt to interact was met with Daniel's dismissal. I noticed Jennifer's glances at him whenever I spoke, suggesting she was guiding him, influencing his actions. This infuriated me, but I couldn't discern how to challenge it. As the celebration concluded, I was utterly spent, emotionally depleted. The following day, Daniel arrived at my home. I anticipated his request for funds. It was his usual habit, and I had consistently provided for him. Yet, an internal change had occurred. A boundary had been crossed. I could no longer continue supporting him, particularly given his recent behavior. Observing him quietly playing with Leo, a firm determination began to solidify within me. I would no longer serve as his financial resource. I wouldn't permit him to exploit me and then cast me aside as worthless. He approached me with that recognizable expression, indicating a need. "Mother," he began, "I require funds for rent and other expenses." My heart pained me as I met his gaze. This was the crucial point. I couldn't continue this cycle. No, Daniel, I stated with conviction. I will no longer provide you with money. I cannot continue to facilitate this behavior. His expression grew stern, his jaw tightening. What is this about? You have always supplied me with cash. I understand, but that stops now, I responded. I refuse to sustain this pattern. You must learn to manage your own affairs. His eyes widened, followed by a surge of fury. You're intentionally doing this. You're trying to penalize me, aren't you? You've always sought to dominate me, and now you're using your finances to achieve it. You're exactly like father. Those words inflicted a deeper wound than I would acknowledge. However, something within me broke. I'm not attempting to punish you, Daniel. I'm endeavoring to impart a lesson. You must mature and accept accountability for your own existence. I cannot continue to handle everything on your behalf. He stormed from the house, forcefully closing the door. I remained standing, my pulse quickening, yet a peculiar sense of liberation enveloped me. For the first time in ages, I had asserted myself. Still, I understood this was merely the start. I had no foresight of the events to unfold, but I sensed they would alter everything. My intuition proved remarkably accurate. I gazed at the door Daniel had shut, its reverberation still present. Brief relief gave way to a throbbing pain in my chest. My soul child had never been so unkind, so uncaring. His accusations, likening me to Harold and alleging manipulation, cut deeper than I allowed myself to feel. He was enraged. More accurately, he was exasperated and wounded, but I could no longer be his constant support. Not now. I required distance. I needed mental clarity. Donning my jacket, I went outside, strolling without purpose through the streets. The sharp air chilled my skin, yet breathing freely and being alone with my thoughts felt restorative. For months, my mind had been consumed by Harold's death and my son's requests, but not anymore. Instead, I pondered what had just occurred. Daniel's fury. Jennifer's deliberate detachment. What was truly happening in their lives? What crucial details was I overlooking? My walk extended beyond my initial intention. I ended up in the park, where autumn colors were just emerging. I cherished the fall. How the tree hues seemed to reflect the changing phases of my own journey. Today, however, its splendor felt remote. My mind was too preoccupied, too absorbed by my family's turmoil. It was at the intersection of Oak and Main that I spotted them. Jennifer, my son's wife, sat at a cafe with an unfamiliar man. They were laughing, her hand casually placed on his arm, seemingly oblivious to their surroundings. For a beat, I remained still, concealed behind the cafe's thick pane, observing them. A knot of apprehension formed in my gut. What exactly was I witnessing? I'd always found Jennifer somewhat reserved, but this felt profoundly different. It felt improper. I attempted to dismiss the growing discomfort, but my inquisitiveness overcame me. Instinctively, I turned and walked further up the street, my heart thumping. I knew my actions weren't entirely proper, but their behavior compelled me to seek more information. I was nearing a truth I wasn't prepared to face, yet I couldn't halt my pursuit. My feet led me onward, and soon I found myself positioned behind the establishment. Wishing to remain unnoticed and avoid a commotion, I maintained my distance, hidden in the alley's shadows. Through a narrow gap between structures, I watched Jennifer and the man rise, collect their belongings, and exit the cafe. They appeared utterly comfortable together, devoid of any guilt or reluctance. As they proceeded down the street, I found myself trailing them, my pace slow, my spirit burdened by the gravity of what I was on the verge of uncovering. I wasn't clear what I sought, but a profound unease suggested the outcome would be negative. They rounded the corner and entered a hotel, their laughter still lingering as they went inside. I remained fixed, my feet glued to the pavement, thoughts swirling. I was paralyzed, unable to inhale. It felt as if time had ceased, leaving me suspended. Then, confirming my deepest anxieties, I witnessed it. Jennifer embraced him with a kiss. A public kiss, right there on the sidewalk, before they entered the hotel. The truth struck me with immense force. My son's wife was unfaithful to Daniel, and this individual, a stranger to me, was the object of her affection. I was in disbelief. I felt on the verge of collapsing onto the pavement, my thoughts fixated on Daniel, my child. How would he cope with this revelation? How could I inform him? How could I possibly deliver such devastating news? I knew I had to tell him. It was imperative. No other path existed. This information was essential for him. Yet, the prospect of revealing it, of witnessing his reaction, made me feel physically ill. I attempted to suppress my fear as I returned to my vehicle. The journey home passed indistinctly. My mind was a storm of questions. What words would I use? How would I approach this? How? The burden of the secret felt crushing. I understood it would shatter any remaining bond with Daniel, but I could not disregard it. Not at this point. Upon reaching home, I settled in the living room, staring at the void Harold's absence had created. The silence was overwhelming, punctuated only by Jennifer's remembered laughter, the sound of her kiss, and the echo of my world falling apart. Daniel needed to know, but how could I convey it? How could I look him in the eye and share this truth? I tried to steady myself, but the idea of facing him caused my hands to tremble. I walked restlessly for what seemed like ages, ultimately concluding I couldn't delay. I couldn't withhold this from him. I grabbed the phone and dialed his number, my heart thumping as it rang. "Hello?" Daniel's voice sounded remote. "Daniel," I began, my voice a mere whisper. "I must speak with you." A silence followed, then I heard his sigh. "What's wrong, Mother?" I inhaled deeply, bracing myself. "It concerns Jennifer. I witnessed her with someone today. A man. They were kissing. Daniel, she's being unfaithful to you." A prolonged quiet descended. A chasm of silence, vast and impassable, separating us. Then Daniel spoke, his voice strained with disbelief. "You're fabricating this. I wish that were true," I murmured, my voice thick with feeling. "But it isn't. I witnessed them. I couldn't simply remain silent." I awaited his reply, but none came. I felt the distance between us expanding, the divide deepening with each moment. Eventually, Daniel's voice pierced the quiet. "I don't trust you, Mother. I refuse to believe it. I am speaking truthfully, Daniel. You must believe me." But I already detected it in his tone. Uncertainty, rage, skepticism. He resisted accepting it. A part of me knew he wouldn't. Yet, I couldn't retreat now. "I'll provide proof," I declared, my voice trembling. "I'll reveal all." I ended the call, my heart racing. This would be arduous, but it was essential. I had to make him understand. I couldn't allow Jennifer to escape accountability. I couldn't permit her to ruin my family without resistance. Sleep had eluded me the previous night. My thoughts spun, replaying the cafe encounter. The kiss, the unknown man. It felt like an inescapable nightmare. Yet it was painfully real. Everything was true. Now I had to confront Daniel. I needed to tell him what I'd witnessed, what I understood. Regardless of the emotional toll, I had to do it for his well-being, for the stability of our family. The morning felt oppressively quiet, burdened. I had practiced my words endlessly in my mind, but with each mental run-through, they grew harder to utter. What if he rejected my account? What if he resented me for revealing the truth? What if it shattered everything? But I couldn't keep it contained any longer. I knew the truth demanded to be exposed, and it was my responsibility to bring it forth. Arriving at Daniel's house, that familiar unease coiled in my stomach. Years had passed since my last visit, years since I felt truly at home here. Once, it had been a welcoming space, a place where my presence was valued. Now, it felt unwelcoming, a place where I no longer fit. My hands shaking, I rang the bell and waited. Moments later, the door opened, revealing Daniel, his face bearing that same cautious look. I couldn't discern if he was angry or simply detached. but I had to proceed. "Mother," he stated, his voice devoid of emotion. "What is this regarding?" I drew a breath and entered, knowing retreat was impossible. "Daniel, we need to discuss Jennifer," he scowled, visibly annoyed. "What concerning her? I lack the time for this." "I observed her today," I said, my voice quivering despite efforts to remain composed. "She's being unfaithful to you." "I saw her with another man. They entered a hotel together. I witnessed it." "You're fabricating," Daniel interjected, his voice escalating. "This is absurd. Why are you doing this, Alice? What do you seek from me?" "Cease attempting to make me appear foolish." He shook his head incredulously, hands tightened at his sides. "You've always been overly dramatic, but this crosses a line. You're simply trying to harm us." A sharp pain pierced my chest. I wasn't aiming to hurt him, I was trying to assist him, to reveal the obvious truth. Yet, the more I explained, the more he distanced himself. "I am not lying," I insisted, struggling to maintain a level tone. "I saw her. Daniel. I am telling you what actually happened." Daniel's face flushed, his jaw became rigid. He appeared on the verge of speaking further, but then the adjacent room's door creaked open. Jennifer. She stood framed in the entrance, her eyes initially wide with surprise, which she swiftly concealed behind a superficial smile. She had overheard everything. "Oh, Alice," she uttered, her tone falsely saccharine. "Are you truly serious? You're actually proceeding with this?" She advanced into the room, her gaze narrowing with disdain. "You have no shame, do you? What lengths will you go to ruin our existence?" I began to speak, but Jennifer continued. She approached, her voice growing sharper. "You're aging, Alice. You're losing your faculties, aren't you? You require assistance. Perhaps it's time you acknowledged that." Her words pierced me more deeply than I would confess, but I couldn't yield. This transcended my personal feelings now. It was about what was real. I would not let her control me. Not this time. Especially knowing the harm she inflicted upon my son. "You have no right to address me that way," I retorted, my voice escalating. "I am not the irrational one. You are. You're the one tearing everything apart. You've been deceiving Daniel, and you assume I wouldn't notice?" Jennifer's eyes ignited with rage. She advanced on me, her posture rigid with indignation. "I don't need to hear this. You've never been truly part of our family, Alice. Do you think I'm unaware of your intentions? You've always wished to disrupt things, and now you're using this to divide us. What sort of individual behaves like that?" Fury surged within me. This was no longer solely about her infidelity. This was about years of cunning manipulation, years of feigning normalcy when chaos reigned. And Jennifer, she orchestrated it all. I shook, not from fright, but from anger, from exasperation, from years of neglect, disrespect, and marginalization. Without conscious thought, I grabbed the closest item on the table, a drinking glass. It was a foolish impulse, a momentary choice fueled by frustration. I seized the vessel and, with a single, forceful motion, flung it to the floor. The sharp, deafening sound of breaking glass echoed through the room. The cup fractured into countless fragments, one of which flew towards Jennifer, cutting her leg. She shrieked, a piercing sound laced with fury. "See what you've done!" she screamed, gripping her leg. Blood began to well between her fingers. "You attempted to murder me! You're deranged, Alice, utterly unhinged." Her accusations struck me forcefully. I hadn't intended to harm her. I didn't truly care for her. But what truly mattered was her immediate effort to reverse the narrative, casting me as the antagonist. She assumed the role of the injured party, and I was losing ground. Daniel hurried to her, his expression contorted with fury and shock. "What is utterly wrong with you, Mother?" he yelled. "You've gone mad. Leave my house immediately." I stood paralyzed, my heart fracturing anew. I had sought to aid him, to reveal the truth, and this was his response. Jennifer's inflamed eyes met mine with a cruel triumph. She had prevailed. She had alienated my son from me, and I was powerless. "I'm finished, Alice," Daniel stated, his voice devoid of warmth. "I wish to never see you again." I remained silent, turning to exit. The impact of his words, his casual dismissal of me, was overwhelming. Yet, I instinctively knew I couldn't surrender. I couldn't allow them victory. I would discover a method to expose the truth, even if it cost me everything. Never had I felt so utterly helpless. The days following our confrontation passed indistinctly. Daniel remained silent, unseen. Jennifer's accusations replayed in my head. How she distorted facts, painted me as evil, and how Daniel, my son, had cast me out as if I were the aggressor. I drifted through those subsequent days in a confused state, uncertain of my next move. Returning to that house was impossible. I couldn't face him after his words, but neither could I let matters conclude this way. I had to persist. A way to reveal the truth had to exist. However, that struggle would prove far more complex than anticipated. It began on a Wednesday morning. I had visited the market, seeking distraction from recent events. As I moved through the grocery aisle, my phone vibrated in my pocket. I retrieved it, half anticipating a message from Daniel. Perhaps he was finally making contact. Perhaps the truth was dawning on him. Instead, it was a text from Jennifer. "We need to discuss you. You are unwell. Daniel and I are concerned. This situation cannot continue." Her words struck me like a physical blow. What did she imply? This cannot continue. I had barely finished reading when the phone rang. It was Daniel. "Mother, we need a conversation," he said, his voice flat and devoid of feeling. "Jennifer and I are truly worried. You're not coping well. You require assistance." "Assistance?" I repeated, bewildered. "What do you mean, Daniel? I'm merely attempting to tell you the truth about your spouse. I'm trying to safeguard you." "You're unwell, Mother?" he reiterated, his tone tense. "We believe it's time for you to seek professional intervention. Perhaps even a specialized facility. Just temporarily. You're becoming increasingly aggressive." You hurled a glass at Jennifer. "That is unacceptable." I stood motionless in the grocery aisle, the implications sinking in. A facility? They intended to commit me. It felt as though my world was collapsing. "Daniel," I said, my voice quivering. "I am not insane. I am not losing my sanity. I witnessed what I saw, and I'm trying to shield you. You must comprehend." "I apologize, Mother," he interrupted. "But this is no longer something we can overlook. We've consulted a physician. Jennifer has conducted some inquiries, and we believe it's in your best interest to receive assistance. We will handle all arrangements. It will be beneficial for you." That final phrase cut me like a blade. "It will be beneficial for you." The statement felt utterly false. This wasn't about my improvement. It was about their desire to eliminate me. They sought to control me, to strip away my remaining autonomy. "Daniel, I implore you," I pleaded, my voice breaking. "Don't proceed with this. You're allowing her to influence you. Don't let her do this to me." The line fell silent. A moment passed. Then I heard his heavy, resigned sigh. "I'm doing this for your benefit, Mother. I want you to recover. I wish to assist you." Before I could utter another word, he disconnected. I remained in the aisle, feeling suffocated. A hospital? A mental institution? Was that how they perceived me now? Someone needing confinement? I had no time to digest it before my doorbell chimed later that day. Expecting no one, I was startled to find Daniel on my doorstep, Jennifer beside him. She wore that same self-satisfied, condescending smirk that always infuriated me. "I'm sorry, Mother," Daniel stated, appearing more uneasy than I'd ever witnessed. "But we've made preparations. We believe it's best for you to leave. It's time for you to receive assistance." "Receive assistance?" I echoed, my voice escalating in anger. "I am not going to any wretched facility. I don't require help. I need you to recognize what is occurring. What she is doing to you." Jennifer advanced, her voice sugary but laced with venom. Daniel and I are simply trying to do what's best, Alice. You are not your former self. You're growing increasingly unpredictable, more volatile. We cannot idly observe you harming yourself. I yearned to shout, to unveil the truth instantly, but I knew it would be futile. They wouldn't heed me. They were too deeply entangled in her deceptions. They wouldn't accept my words. They are expecting you at the institution, Daniel said, his gaze avoiding mine. We will handle every detail. My world felt like it was disintegrating. I had never conceived that my own son would do this, that he would let Jennifer convince him I was the issue. This was the gravest treachery. Before I could utter a sound, two unknown men in formal attire appeared in the doorway behind Daniel and Jennifer. They said nothing, simply stood there, quiet and unfeeling. My heart pounded. I understood their purpose. Daniel, please, I pleaded, my voice trembling. Don't go through with this. You cannot allow them to take me. I am not unwell. But Daniel merely moved aside, his expression blank. I'm acting in your best interest, Mother. I truly am sorry. One of the men advanced toward me. Mrs. Alice, please, we need to escort you to the vehicle. I yearned to resist, to cry out against this injustice, but I was too frail, too crushed. They were taking me, and I was utterly helpless. As I was guided to the car, Jennifer's voice trailed after me. It will be better for you, Alice. You'll realize it. The journey to the institution felt like a drawn-out, stifling nightmare. I was confined, without power or agency. The tears I had suppressed for days finally flowed as I sat in the back, gazing at the world from which I was being removed. Never had I experienced such profound isolation. They treated me as if I were incompetent, as if my life choices were not my own. But they were mistaken. I was not insane. I was not feeble. And I would not surrender. I would discover an escape. I had no alternative. The institution's walls were severe, frigid, and unwelcoming. The antiseptic scent of cleaner permeated the air, blending with the low thrum of distant machinery. It bore no resemblance to my previous life. This was not my residence. This was where individuals were sent when they had no other recourse, when they were judged unable to care for themselves. And that was their current assessment of me. I sat in the cramped, uncomfortable chair in my room, hands folded in my lap, experiencing the full burden of my situation. How had I arrived at this point? Only weeks prior, I was in my own house, living my life, attempting to reveal the truth to my son. Now, I was treated like an incapacitated burden. The most agonizing part was that no one would listen. Daniel, my very own child, had put me here. He had permitted Jennifer to sway him, to persuade him that I was losing my faculties. I had dedicated years to guarding and loving him, only for him to discard me as insignificant. And Jennifer, she was the orchestrator, manipulating everything from the shadows. It was deeply mortifying. Their manner of treating and addressing me, as if I were delicate, as if I couldn't grasp the reality, made me feel utterly diminished. I had never felt so insignificant. Their initial visit to see me was an experience I would never erase from memory. Daniel appeared uneasy and remorseful. Seemingly at a loss for how to handle the circumstances, I sensed his internal conflict over his decision. A momentary spark of something akin to remorse crossed his eyes, but it vanished quickly. Initially, he seemed speechless. He stood near the entrance, hands buried deep in his pockets, avoiding my gaze. I observed him, the very child I had nurtured, the son who once sought my solace and advice. Now, he was unrecognizable. Mother, he finally uttered, his voice quiet. I'm at a loss for words. This entire situation it's quite complicated. I offered no reply. What words could I possibly offer? His choice was made. He had prioritized Jennifer above me. He glanced at the floor, fidgeting. I feel guilty, you know. It's difficult witnessing you in this state. I recognized the remorse in his gaze, yet it held no weight. The harm was irreversible. The treachery too profound. Jennifer, beside him, adopted her most solicitous demeanor, though I saw through it effortlessly. She was pretending, as she always did. "I understand, Daniel," she uttered, her voice oozing insincere compassion. "It's truly difficult to see her this way, but she requires assistance. We are doing this out of concern, because we desire her recovery." I longed to yell at her, to reveal how clearly I saw through her falsehoods, how I understood her exact machinations, but I remained silent. It was useless. They had no interest in the truth, their minds were already set. When Daniel left for the restroom, leaving me alone with Jennifer, I sensed the atmosphere change. It was as if the pretense of concern had ended, and the genuine Jennifer was about to emerge. She drew near, her voice hushed, almost a murmur, yet utterly devoid of warmth. "Now that you're settled here, Alice," she stated, with a smile that failed to reach her eyes, "I intend to acquire all your possessions, your residence, your vehicle, your monetary holdings. It will all soon belong to me, and eventually, to my paramour as well. You possess nothing remaining, absolutely nothing, and you are powerless to prevent it." Her words, filled with malice, pressed down on me. My body chilled. My stomach churned. It felt as though everything I had strived for, everything I had created, was slipping away. My son, my dwelling, my existence, all of it was being seized. The most profound shock wasn't merely Jennifer's pursuit of my assets and my life. It was the understanding that Daniel remained completely unaware. He had no inkling of her true character. He was so ensnared by her deception that he couldn't perceive reality. And Jennifer capitalized on this, using him to achieve her every desire. I tightened my fists, my nails pressing into my skin. Why hadn't I noticed this sooner? How could I have been so oblivious to her machinations? Jennifer's grin broadened as she observed my expression. She knew she had triumphed. She knew I was helpless to intervene. "You will never leave this place, Alice," she declared, her voice oozing triumph. "We possess you precisely where we desire. You are frail. You are insignificant now." I wouldn't let her witness my pain. I denied her the pleasure of realizing her profound impact. Instead, I met her gaze directly and stated, "You will not succeed with this. I will oppose you. I will resist until I have no strength remaining." She let out a soft, derisive laugh that inflamed my anger. "Feel free to attempt it," she said, pivoting and departing. As I sat, her words weighing heavily, I knew I could not yield. I couldn't permit Jennifer to triumph. I couldn't allow her to demolish everything Harold and I had built. I needed to escape. I needed to uncover her deceit, to reveal the truth to Daniel. Beyond that, I had to reclaim autonomy over my life. For if I failed, everything familiar, everything cherished, would vanish permanently. And I wasn't prepared for that. Not yet. I couldn't simply remain here, allowing Jennifer to seize all I had labored for. I couldn't let her prevail. I needed to act. The more I considered it, the clearer it became. I required something tangible, something verifiable proof. I needed concrete proof for Daniel that Jennifer was not the kind, guileless woman she feigned to be. I wouldn't leave my son in ignorance. He deserved to know the reality. I knew he wouldn't directly believe me, not after recent events. But I had to find a way to expose her true, monstrous nature. The only obstacle was my confinement in this wretched institution, utterly ensnared. They dictated my every action, my very existence. I couldn't simply depart and challenge them. If I attempted it, they would contact Daniel, and I would forfeit any hope of regaining his confidence. But I still possessed options. I could utilize the available resources. I was permitted access to the communal computer. It was limited, but sufficient. Late one evening, after the other residents slept, I entered the room. My hands trembled as I sat, but this task was imperative. I needed to move swiftly before Jennifer and Daniel could inflict further harm. I launched the browser and sought a private detective. I was unsure how to proceed, but I knew time was critical. Several listings appeared, but one captured my attention. A local investigative firm with strong testimonials. I inhaled deeply, my heart thrumming, and clicked the contact number. A man answered on the second ring. "Hello, Donovan Investigations? How may I assist?" I swallowed with difficulty, my throat parched. "I require assistance," I stated, my voice almost inaudible. "Something is happening. Something I must reveal, but I cannot do it independently." I recounted everything to him. Jennifer's manipulation of Daniel, her seizure of control over my life, and my current confinement within the institution. I disclosed her affair and her elaborate plot to claim all my possessions. Then I offered the last crucial detail. I spoke of Leo, my grandson, and my suspicion that Jennifer's secret partner, not Daniel, might be his biological father. Donovan remained silent for a moment, absorbing every word, then spoke with a calm yet grave tone. "We can obtain the necessary proof," he stated, "but you'll require more than just her infidelity. You need evidence that she's orchestrating everything for your financial gain. That is paramount for a legal challenge." I pondered this, the disparate elements gradually connecting. I couldn't merely expose the affair and expect Daniel to accept my word. I needed confirmation of the larger plot, the financial exploitation, her dominance over Daniel, the falsehoods she had instilled in him. "I have a concept," I blurted. "I need you to acquire something for me. A recording device. I'm confined here, but I have a chance to expose her. I just need a method to capture her admitting her actions and intentions." Donovan consented to my proposal. He would dispatch a recorder, and I would devise a way for Jennifer to make a mistake. However, the most challenging phase was still ahead. I knew that any escape attempt would prompt an immediate call to Daniel, and if he arrived, Jennifer would surely follow. I needed them to approach me, to face me, but I required the advantage. The sole means to achieve my goal was to maneuver Jennifer into a position where she would betray herself, where her deceptions would become evident. The strategy began to materialize. My footsteps resonated in the corridor as I walked, my mind consumed by the intricacies of my scheme. Every step had to be flawless. A single misstep could cost me everything, but I had exhausted my options. Jennifer believed she had triumphed, but I intended to reverse our positions. I would unmask her definitively. The strategy was straightforward. I needed to create a disturbance. I had to convince them I was desperate enough to attempt fleeing this dreadful place. If I could draw their notice, make them believe I was losing my grip, it would compel them to respond. That would bring Daniel here, and Jennifer would follow. And that would be my opportunity to record her, her authentic self, her falsehoods, her deceitful schemes. Thus, I acted. I forcefully shut my room door, scattering some possessions onto the floor with maximum noise. Then, I shouted, I shrieked, appealing for assistance, calling to anyone within earshot. I cried out about my confinement, about my inability to endure it further, my urgent need to depart. It was entirely a performance, naturally, but it demanded authenticity. I heard staff footsteps hurrying down the hall, their voices growing anxious, but I persisted. I needed them to become frantic. I needed them to contact Daniel. I needed them to bring him here, with Jennifer accompanying him, and precisely as I had envisioned, within minutes, the front desk phone rang. I didn't require hearing the dialogue to understand the situation. They were summoning him. Daniel would be en route. Jennifer would be alongside him. The snare was prepared. Moments later, I heard the door open. Daniel entered, his expression a blend of bewilderment and annoyance, as if interrupted from a vital task. Jennifer stood next to him, her face impeccably serene, the feigned worry still fixed on her features. "Mother, what on earth is happening?" Daniel demanded, his voice brimming with vexation. "What is this display? Why are you behaving this way?" I noted the rigidity in his shoulders, his uneasy shifting as he observed me. He clearly wished not to be here, nor to engage with me, and I sensed it in the unspoken atmosphere. But this was my opportunity. This was the moment to influence events, to make him consider that perhaps, just perhaps, I wasn't as irrational as Jennifer wished him to think. I drew a deep breath, contorting my face into an expression of remorse. My voice emerged soft, almost begging. Daniel, I apologize. I understand you act out of concern, but I cannot continue living this way. I must leave this place. Please, could you speak with the physician? Perhaps. Perhaps my restrictions could be lessened. Please, just help me. For an instant, I glimpsed a spark of guilt in his eyes. I perceived it. The bewilderment, the contrition. He detested seeing me in this state. He loathed my confinement, but he was so completely misled by Jennifer that he failed to see I was not to blame. It wasn't me. It was her. Instead, he looked at Jennifer, his eyes seeking her approval as if for permission to act. That single glance conveyed everything. Jennifer held him captive. She was the puppeteer, and I merely a piece in their cruel charade. After what seemed an endless wait, Daniel sighed. I'll speak with the doctor, he mumbled, his voice edged with exasperation. I'll investigate my options. With that, he exited, leaving me alone with Jennifer. This was the moment, my opportunity. I waited briefly, listening intently for Daniel's receding footsteps. Once certain he was gone, I faced Jennifer. She stood, arms folded, a self-satisfied smirk playing on her lips, as if her victory was assured. I knew my course of action. I let out a gentle, almost weary sigh, maintaining a casual tone as I spoke. So, you've been quite active, haven't you? I presume you've already exhausted all my funds? I know you've been orchestrating this for some time. You've likely already disposed of the house and the vehicle. That's your modus operandi, isn't it? To seize everything belonging to me and claim it as your own. Jennifer's smile wavered for an instant, but she rapidly regained composure, her expression now laden with feigned compassion. Alice, you fail to grasp the situation. We are acting for your benefit. You need assistance. You need to improve. You cannot continue this existence. You've forfeited everything. But her words no longer registered. I understood my actions precisely. I had lured her. And now she was exactly where I needed her. Jennifer let out a shrill, contemptuous laugh that ignited my fury. She moved nearer, as if to offer solace. But her words were merely the deceptions she'd fed me for months. You have no comprehension how much simpler life is now that we don't concern ourselves with you, she declared, her tone saturated with spite. The property is sold. The automobile is gone. Every item you possessed. It is all mine now. We are thriving, Alice. Living comfortably from your funds. You fulfilled your role. You are now merely a burden, a superfluous elderly female. Her statements felt like a direct assault. I had always been aware of Jennifer's cruelty, but hearing her utter it so dispassionately, so explicitly, sickened me. Yet, I concealed my pain. I could not afford to display vulnerability. What remained unknown to her, what she utterly failed to grasp, was that her every utterance was being captured. Every admission, every untruth, was being secured by the small gadget concealed in my pocket. She smirked at me, her voice scornful as she continued. You'll never reclaim anything, Alice. You are powerless to change this now. You're confined. I drew a breath, maintaining a neutral expression. We shall see. I murmured softly, certain that ultimately, Jennifer would lament every word she had just spoken. I possessed what was essential. The corroboration. The incriminating evidence. Now, nothing could impede me. I would ensure Daniel learned the truth. It was merely a question of timing. The significance of what I held felt immense. At the shared computer, my fingers quivered as I connected to the internet, meticulously transferring the files from the recorder Donovan provided. Jennifer's every statement, every admission, every falsehood, was present. I could almost sense her sneer, hear her malicious laughter replaying in my thoughts. But these were no longer just her words. Now, it was verification. Concrete, undeniable evidence. I hesitated before pressing send. This was it, the culmination of my waiting. I was no longer merely a helpless elderly woman in a cold, impersonal institution. I had an opportunity to regain command, to reveal the facts. I had endured so much, and I refused to let Jennifer succeed. I dispatched the files to Donovan, my heart thumping as the email departed. I trembled with a blend of apprehension and exhilaration, uncertain of the immediate future, yet knowing I had committed irrevocably. I was no longer passive. I was actively resisting. Moments later, Donovan's response arrived. It was direct, brief, and businesslike. We possess all necessary information. I am initiating legal proceedings now. We will make this public, and I have also engaged legal counsel to facilitate your release from that establishment. We will ensure your confinement ends. I exhaled unsteadily. I could scarcely comprehend it. For the first time in months, I experienced a glimmer of hope. Perhaps this ordeal could conclude. Perhaps I could finally reclaim my life, but relaxation was impossible. Donovan's subsequent message sent a chill through me. Listen, Alice. I've consulted with the attorney. We must act with urgency. Should Daniel and Jennifer become aware, they will obliterate the evidence before we can utilize it. We need to extract you from there as swiftly and subtly as possible. We cannot allow them to discover our intentions. My heart hammered. I understood the implications. If they discovered our plan, everything would collapse. Jennifer would ensure it. She would ruthlessly annihilate me. This operation demanded absolute secrecy. No one could be informed. The gravity of the situation pressed upon me. I was no longer merely battling for my liberty. I was contending for my future, my existence, my family's heritage. Everything Harold and I had built was at stake. I could not permit a single error. The strategy was straightforward. I had to escape quickly. But there was a complication. I couldn't achieve it solo. I would require the attorney and Donovan to act rapidly. Crucially, they needed to ensure Daniel and Jennifer remained completely oblivious. They absolutely couldn't learn of the developments. If they did, they would retaliate, and I would forfeit everything. The lawyer Donovan had arranged contacted me the next morning. His voice was composed, businesslike, yet an undeniable urgency was present. We have submitted the required documentation, Alice, he informed me. We've already communicated with the facility. They are cooperating, and we will relocate you to a secure place within days. You'll be gone before anyone comprehends, but you must remain silent. Do not let them know our actions. I nodded, though unseen by him. I won't utter a word. I simply need to depart. Good. We are developing a strategy to safeguard your assets. We'll ensure Jennifer cannot seize anything. However, we must be prompt. If they learn of the legal proceedings, they will quickly attempt to conceal their misdeeds. A wave of hope, mingled with dread, washed over me. Everything teetered on the brink. But I had no alternative. I had to place my faith in them. I had to believe they could assist me. I understand, I replied. Just ensure they don't discover. If they do, it's finished. We are on it, the attorney affirmed. We will provide continuous updates. Simply remain composed, and we will secure your release. I ended the call and sat in quiet, attempting to regulate my breath. It was truly happening. I was going to escape, but anxiety persisted. What if errors occurred? What if Jennifer learned the truth? What if Daniel regained clarity and understood my actions? I could not afford any missteps now. I could only trust those actively facilitating my escape. And so, I waited. The days crawled by, each feeling more protracted than the previous. I felt an internal tightening, but I concealed it. I couldn't allow anyone here to perceive my desperation, neither the personnel nor the other patients. No one could know I was on the verge of liberation. I utilized every available moment in my room, channeling the time to build my resolve and prepare for the impending events. Retreat was no longer an option. This was my opportunity. This was my battle, and I intended to emerge victorious. Lying in bed that evening, my thoughts spinning, I realized everything was on the brink of transformation. For better or worse, I was poised to reclaim my existence, but Jennifer remained unaware. And when she discovered, it would be irreversible. The snare was laid. Now was the moment for it to activate. The morning arrived silently, a gentle glow filtering through my blinds. I sat on the bed's edge, my heart thrumming with expectation. This was the day. The day everything would shift. Today I would finally break free from the nightmare they had imposed. I had never felt such vitality. Yet, a sense of prudence persisted. There was no margin for error now, not after all I had suffered. I couldn't afford to waver, especially with such high stakes. I heard faint footsteps beyond my door, then the gentle rap I anticipated. It was Donovan. He had orchestrated every detail. "Are you prepared?" he inquired, his voice hushed, imbued with urgency. I nodded, though unseen by him. "I am ready." He passed me a small envelope containing court papers, all necessary for my official discharge. The attorney had acted swiftly, and thanks to their diligence, I was leaving unbeknownst to others. Absolutely no one, especially Jennifer and Daniel, could discover this. I rose, my knees a bit unsteady, but I suppressed my apprehension. I could not display any vulnerability now, not when I was so near reclaiming my life's direction. Donovan gave a swift nod, and we traversed the facility's rear corridors rapidly. The personnel were occupied, and the security guards had received explicit orders to avoid inquiries. Every detail was arranged for my seamless departure. Within minutes, I was outside, stepping into the brisk morning air. The world felt transformed, as if I were observing it anew after years confined in shadows. For the first time in what seemed an eternity, I could inhale, I could reason, I was liberated. But my task was incomplete. One final action remained. Donovan and I entered the vehicle he had prepared. As we drove through the urban landscape, I felt a rising tension in my chest. I had a strategy, and it was time to execute it. I needed to visit Daniel's home. I had to reveal the truth to him. I had to unmask Jennifer's true nature. I was unsure of Daniel's reaction, unsure if he would trust my words. But one fact was undeniable. I could not allow Jennifer to escape consequences. Not after all her actions against me, against him, against our family. Arriving at Daniel's residence, I didn't falter. I approached the door with resolve, the envelope holding the incriminating evidence firmly in my grasp. I rang the bell and paused. Moments later, the door opened. Daniel appeared, surprised, yet as remote as before. His eyes widened, seeing me on his doorstep. "Mother," he uttered, his voice full of bewilderment. "What brings you here?" "I am here to present the truth." "Daniel," I stated, my voice unwavering. "I am here to reveal everything Jennifer has concealed from you." He stared at me for an extended period, clearly at a loss for words. I observed his uncertainty, a subtle hint of skepticism in his gaze, but Jennifer was already present, behind him, her smile strained and artificial. "What is the meaning of this?" she inquired, her voice oozing insincere charm. I ignored her. Instead, I stepped into the entrance, my gaze locked on Daniel. "Do you genuinely wish to know what has transpired without your knowledge?" I asked him, my voice gentle yet resolute. "Do you want to learn your wife's actions?" Daniel's expression grew stern, but a hint of apprehension flashed in his eyes. I understood this was challenging for him to absorb. He had constructed his life with Jennifer, entrusting her with everything, but now the reality was inescapable. I extracted the small recording device and initiated playback. Jennifer's voice permeated the quiet hallway. "The residence is sold. The automobile is gone. Every item you possessed, it is all mine now. We are thriving, Alice. Living comfortably from your funds. You fulfilled your role. You are now a liability, a superfluous elderly female." Daniel's face paled as he heard the recording. Shock was clear on his face, his mouth working silently as if searching for speech. Jennifer's features contorted in panic, but it was futile. The truth had already surfaced. "That isn't how it sounds," Jennifer interjected rapidly, her voice escalating defensively. "You don't comprehend," Daniel. Alice is merely. But Daniel silenced her, his voice quivering with incredulity. Quiet, Jennifer. Just be quiet. I gave him the envelope containing the financial records. He accepted them, his hands shaking as he opened them. I watched as understanding dawned while he read. The evidence of Jennifer's deceit, her control, her plotting, it was all there, in stark detail. Denial was no longer possible. This is madness, Daniel whispered, his voice laced with dread. He looked at me, his face a mix of regret and astonishment. I was completely unaware. I had no clue she was doing this to me. To you. Jennifer's face flushed with rage. You have no idea what you're saying, she hissed. These are all fabrications. None of this is accurate. I slowly shook my head, my gaze fixed on her. You've been deceiving him, Jennifer, all along. You've been controlling him, seizing everything Harold and I earned, and you thought you could escape consequences. But you cannot. Daniel faced Jennifer, his voice chillingly stern. I placed my faith in you. I believed you. But you've been betraying me constantly. Jennifer's face contorted into sheer fury. You have no idea what you're saying, she snarled, stepping closer. You believe you can just walk in here and shatter everything? I am not destroying anything, Jennifer. I replied, my voice calm. You accomplished that entirely by yourself. Daniel remained, staring at her, his mind visibly spinning from the recent revelations. He looked back at me, his eyes filled with bewilderment and pain. Is it accurate? Is Leo? I drew a deep breath and nodded, the gravity of the truth settling. Yes. Leo might not be your biological child. Jennifer's infidelity has been ongoing for some time. I regret this, Daniel, but it's time you faced the facts. Daniel's face collapsed, the full impact of the revelation crushing him. No, this cannot be real. But it was, and now there was no avoiding it. Jennifer stood exposed, the truth had emerged, and the life she had constructed on deceit began to dismantle. A tempest had swept through Daniel's existence, leaving only devastation. The burden of everything, the treachery, the falsehoods, the control loomed over him like an inescapable shadow. The ensuing days passed in a haze. Jennifer was apprehended, facing accusations of financial misconduct, deception, and collusion. The proof I supplied, her recorded words, the papers, everything was sufficient to secure her incarceration. The authorities acted swiftly. She was escorted away, restrained and shamed, her expression contorted with fury and shock. She attempted to proclaim her blamelessness, but it was too late. Her deceptions had finally ensnared her, and there was no escape. I observed the scene, feeling a peculiar sense of liberation. It wasn't the triumph I had envisioned. There was no gratification in witnessing her removal, no delight in knowing she would finally face consequences. All I felt was a void. For years I had suffered her malice. For years I had been swayed, dominated, and now I stood amidst the ruins of everything. Daniel, naturally, was shattered. He had placed his faith in her. He had constructed a life with her, believing it authentic, but now, all his convictions lay in fragments. He was left to gather the broken shards, an arduous task. I attempted to avoid him in the subsequent days, allowing him room to comprehend everything. I was uncertain how to address him. After all, he had also wronged me. He had aligned with Jennifer, abandoning me when I most required his support. But now, a new emotion was present in his eyes. Regret. He appeared at my doorstep one afternoon, appearing weary and shattered. He was changed. His face was ashen, his stance defeated, as if the burden of his deeds had physically depleted him. Mother, he uttered softly, his voice broken. I don't know how to mend this. I don't know how to atone for my actions. I remained silent initially. What response was appropriate? I had endured too much to grant immediate forgiveness. But there was an authentic quality in his words, something raw and sincere. Perhaps he was finally perceiving the reality. Perhaps he was beginning to grasp the extent of his own misjudgment. Daniel, I eventually spoke, my voice firm but laden with our shared history. It's not about repairing it. It's about drawing lessons from it. You must confront your actions. You must live with them. And so must I. He nodded slowly, gazing at the floor. I understand. I know I cannot undo any of it, but there's something I feel compelled to do. I regarded him with interest, awaiting his continuation. I need to adopt Leo, he stated softly. I disregard genetic lineage. I don't care if he isn't my biological child. He is mine. I am the one who has been present for him, who has nurtured him. His declaration lingered between us. For a moment, I was unsure how to respond. It was an incredibly complex, convoluted situation. Leo had always been integral to our family, but now, the question of his biological father hung in the balance. What if he wasn't Daniel's child? What if he was conceived during Jennifer's infidelity? Could Daniel still embody fatherhood in every meaningful way? I lacked the solutions. I couldn't provide them. But in that instant, I comprehended his intention. He sought to rectify matters, to repair what he had damaged, and perhaps, for the very first time, he was striving to truly be a father. Perhaps he was not the man I had perceived. Perhaps he still had an opportunity to demonstrate his worth. You don't have to face this by yourself, Daniel, I said, my voice growing gentler. You are not isolated in this. If you genuinely desire to adopt Leo, then you must contend for him. But you don't have to do it unaided. He gazed at me with appreciation. But another emotion was present, something I couldn't quite pinpoint. Perhaps remorse, perhaps release, but whatever it wasn't the Daniel who had expelled me. This was an individual seeking recovery, attempting to reconstruct his fractured existence. The subsequent weeks were chaotic. Jennifer's apprehension and the legal actions were merely the outset. Discussions about Leo's well-being, custody disputes, and a challenging path lay before Daniel. I observed him gradually accepting accountability for his deeds, for his part in my suffering, and the dissolution of our former relationship. I questioned if we could ever revert to how things once were. So much had been fractured, but I knew this. I was finally unburdened, released from Jennifer's dominance, liberated from the deceit, free from the lingering guilt and resentment that had oppressed me for so long. I began to reconstruct my existence. Deliberately, cautiously, I relocated to a modest house on the town's edge, a place that felt like a new beginning. It wasn't grand, but it was solely mine, my sanctuary, my dwelling. I didn't need to share it. I could live on my own terms, free from others' perpetual demands. And gradually, I started feeling like my old self. I reconnected with long-lost friends, engaged in hobbies I had abandoned for years. I even began volunteering at a local refuge, supporting others who had faced similar hardships. Regarding Leo, I didn't possess all the solutions, but I understood that ultimately, affection transcended biological ties. It was about consistent presence, about unwavering support during adversity, and currently, that individual was Daniel. He and I faced a lengthy journey, but I was prepared to embark, one step at a time. Jennifer may have believed she could strip me of everything, but she failed to grasp that one cannot steal inner fortitude, strength, endurance, the resolve to persist, regardless of life's challenges. And I remained standing. I always would. I chose to begin anew in a different residence. It wasn't opulent or lavish, but it was exclusively mine. A humble 2-story home bordering the town, featuring a small yard and an inviting front stoop. I had selected it personally, every feature carefully chosen, each room embodying my desire for a space truly my own, liberated from past deceptions. I had achieved it. I had recovered what was rightfully mine. The preceding months had been a whirlwind of transformation, legal conflicts, fresh starts, mending old hurts, but standing before this house now, a profound realization struck me. I had reconstructed my existence, not merely the property or my financial standing, but my very identity. The person I once was, consumed by sorrow, by treachery, by abandonment, she was no more. She had been replaced by a more resilient individual, one who recognized her value and was unafraid to assert it. I entered the house, inhaling the scent of fresh paint and new timber. I could almost imagine Harold's voice, expressing his pride. Releasing him hadn't been simple. His absence still created an unfillable void in my soul, but I had learned to bear that sorrow differently now. In a manner that didn't overwhelm me, a way that enabled me to continue. I had devoted many years to others, striving to be the ideal wife, mother, daughter-in-law. Ultimately, however, I understood that the most crucial person to prioritize was myself. I refused to squander any more time on those who had attempted to seize everything from me. I had released the guilt, the bitterness, and the fury that had long dominated me. Yet, this didn't preclude me from assisting loved ones still facing difficulties. Daniel had been diligently working to reconstruct his life, and Leo? Well, Leo was still adapting, still processing the entire situation. I couldn't undo the past, but I could offer my presence. I was uncertain of the future, but I resolved to aid them, as they had aided me, to provide the support I had withheld from myself for too long. It was an early Saturday morning when Daniel visited, appearing fatigued, yet somewhat less burdened than previously. His connection with Jennifer had utterly dissolved, and though recovery was challenging, I observed a transformation in him. He was beginning to comprehend the seriousness of his decisions. The remorse I perceived remained, but it no longer defined him. "I've been reflecting extensively on Leo," he stated, as we sat in the modest living area of my new house. "I am doing all within my power to ensure his well-being, but I question if I am adequate. I doubt if I am sufficient to be the father he requires." I observed the worry etched on his face, the hesitation in his gaze. He was genuinely trying. I could see that. And perhaps, just perhaps, he would evolve into the father Leo needed. "You are sufficient, Daniel," I said gently, my voice imbued with hard-won assurance. "You have always been enough, and I know this is difficult, but I am here for both of you. I realize you will err, but you will learn. You will be a loving father to Leo, but you must first have faith in yourself." He nodded, looking at his hands. "I apologize, Mother," he said, his voice heavy with feeling. "I don't know how to compensate for everything. I don't know how to correct it." "You don't need to fix it, Daniel," I said, reaching out and grasping his hand. "But you can make amends, and that begins with being available for him, being engaged. I'm not claiming it will be simple. It will require patience, but you will succeed." Daniel remained silent for a moment, simply sitting quietly. Then he looked up, a small, uncertain smile forming on his lips. "Thank you, Mother. I don't know where I would be without you." I returned his smile, feeling the comfort of his words settle within me. I had always supported him, but now he was beginning to forge his own path, and that made everything worthwhile. Later that afternoon, Leo arrived for a visit. He remained somewhat reserved, still processing his feelings, but upon seeing me in the doorway, a softness entered his eyes. "Hello, Grandma," he said softly, his voice slightly hesitant. Yet, a glimmer of something appeared within him, perhaps hope. I knelt to his height, my heart overflowing with affection for this child caught amidst such turmoil. "Hello, Leo. I'm pleased you're here." He smiled shyly and stepped into my embrace for a hug. It wasn't flawless, but it was a beginning, and that sufficed for me. We spent the afternoon together, and I sensed the emotional gap between us narrowing. Gradually, we were starting to mend our connection. The hurt from the past would never entirely vanish, but I had learned to bear it in a new way. Over time, I began to appreciate life's small beauties once more. Leo's laughter filling the space, the tranquil moments with Daniel, and the serene privacy of my new residence. As evening concluded, I sat on the porch, watching stars appear. It was calm now, tranquil, and for the first time in ages, I felt truly at ease. Harold's absence would forever remain with me. It was a profound sorrow that never truly subsided. But I had discovered a method to coexist with it, to respect it, and to continue progressing. I was no longer the person I once was. I was now more resilient, more self-reliant, and I knew that regardless of future events, I possessed the fortitude to confront them. I had learned that a fresh start was always possible, to reconstruct, to rediscover happiness, and for the first time in years, I felt genuinely liberated. A new phase was commencing, and I was prepared to embrace it. Thank you for joining me. Please remember to subscribe and share your own experiences in the comments section. Your perspective is valuable,